You got us, Chris? Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Football Show. Myself, Tim Benz, from Trib Live, Breakfast with Benz, and of course, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Fox. You know him from there, and you know him from the Big Ten Network as well. This is a little bit of a different show, might be somewhat of a truncated show this week. You can see him in a different location. I am also about 20 hours post-op from meniscus surgery. You can't see my leg right now. You don't want to see my leg right now. These are bumps and bruises associated with play, as I've heard it said, Mike. So apologize if I all of a sudden wince and grimace with pain. It's got nothing to do with what you say. It's got nothing to do with what the commenters say. I apologize. My voice is a little scratchy. I had a tube in my throat yesterday for the procedure. So I'm going at half speed, to say the least. But we'll get through it. Hopefully the Steelers will get through it against the New England Patriots. We're brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. If you're looking for a place to watch the game, check out Mike's. They've got dozens of big screen TVs available for your Pittsburgh viewing pleasure. Get yourself a steak on a stone or one of their 500 available craft beers. You know, Mike, as we go to our 30,000-foot big picture view, state of the game on game day, we do this every week. Our view from Mount Washington, we like to call it. It struck me the other day. I was filling in for Mark Madden. You were kind enough to come on with me. I know you're on with Mark once a week. And it hit me as we were talking, I think, that this is going to be a game that I think is going to reverberate for a long time throughout the calendar. If we think the Steelers are, and by we, I mean people like me who think they're going to be about 9-8, 10-7, based on last week, maybe they're lucky if they're that. But if they're 9-8, 10-7, and the Patriots are who New England thinks they're going to be, which is about 4 or 5 games better than last year. Look at the AFC. Look at how top-heavy it is. Look at the teams that have not risen up at the bottom yet. I mean, like, if you're a second-place team in your division, you've got a shot for that last wild card at least. I think it's the non-AFC West wild card, we'll call it at this point.
Right.
The Patriots and Steelers at about 9 wins each, or 8 wins, even if the Patriots can get there, this game might have tiebreaker ramifications 3 months from now. I really think that's possible.
Oh, I think that you make a great point. But, I mean, after what we've seen the first 2 weeks, the Steelers are going to have to do a lot of work to get to that level. But one of the things that I noticed in the aftermath of the game on Sunday against Seattle was the continued, or the renewed, I should say, the annual Mike Tomlin bashing fest. And what the interesting thing about the Tomlin bash is that the criticism is that he's not winning playoff games, but they yell at him after he loses in the regular season, which he, on a historical basis, does less than almost anyone who's ever coached in the NFL. He is 12th now in career victories. And maybe more to the point, he is 12th among coaches who've done the job. I'm not a guy who got 1 year, 2 years, and had a great team and went 11-5 or whatever. But guys who've done it for a decade or more, he is 12th in winning percentage. So his problem is not the regular season. And I'm not saying that he's going to figure this out. I think that there are things that they've done that they have to figure out a way to cover for. I think what we've seen over the first 2 weeks, and I'm not saying that the trade of Minkah Fitzpatrick for 2 quality starters was a bad trade, but I think they undervalued the safety position in making that trade because they are getting no help from their safeties at all. A little bit of periodic help from Clark in the run game. Thornhill has made very little impact, and they are not getting the protection that a quality safety offers, which is why you're seeing the middle of the field, Jalen Ramsey continually beaten in the middle of the field because the safety play is just not there. And these are mistakes or decisions that they made in the offseason. We can live without Minkah. Okay, well, we'll show you how we're going to live without Minkah. Well, we're all still waiting to see how that's going to happen. And one wonders if they know. Remember, they didn't use the starting group, the full secondary group in two of the three exhibitions, and only used them for one series in the third exhibition game. And they thought that they could get away with just using them in the Tampa open practice, dual practice, whatever. They thought they could get away with them just using that. And they clearly don't have a design that's functional, and they're approaching their third game already. So Mike Tomlin's made mistakes in his career, but on balance, he usually comes out on the right side in the regular season. So I have questions about where they're going with this, but I don't have doubts until they start putting a series of L's up in that column.
Well, I'd say, Mike, that it's hard now to make the differentiation between the lack of playoff success and the win rate in the regular season and how that hasn't helped them, specifically with, how they're constantly finding themselves in this 7-team playoff format, or even late in the 6-team playoff format, scrambling to be the 5 or the 6 seed, then having to go on the road and play quality teams. So I do think the two criticisms dovetail, don't you?
No, because doing what they've done is harder than people think. If it were easy, I mean, I mentioned this.
I think doing it every year is harder than some people give him credit for. But the actual act of winning 9 games and being a 7 seed isn't that hard. 14 teams make the playoffs out of each conference. That's not as difficult as, well, if you think about the math, it's not difficult at all. It's practically half the conference.
Well, but what you have to remember is that in any given year, there are quality teams that have aspirations. I mean, you look at San Francisco a year ago. They lose a couple of guys, and all of a sudden they can't play at all. I think they wound up 6-11 last year, if I remember correctly. They lost when Garoppolo was their starting quarterback several years ago. They lost him and went right into the tank as well. And maybe there's some advantage to doing that, but continuing to win every year shows that he has facility within the course of the regular season to find a way to be successful. And I understand that they haven't won in the postseason, but for most of that period of time, with the exception of 17 and possibly 18, where they didn't make the postseason, you have not had a prime grade A quarterback. And you are not winning in the postseason very often without someone very close to that. I mean, I think we've seen even now, they lost to Baker Mayfield in 2020, and Baker Mayfield then went on and put a pretty good challenge into the Chiefs. Baker Mayfield has shown himself to be a quality quarterback. It's hard to win in the playoffs when you're throwing out.
Yeah, they could have
Mason
Baker
Rudolph.
Mayfield if they wanted to, and they saw Baker Mayfield beat him. And this might be more of an organizational question, but Mike Tomlin is the key person in that organization, quite honestly. And it's, I always laugh when I think about this, because when they came out of the Roethlisberger era and it was time to move on to whatever the next big thing was going to be, and it turned out to be not that big of a thing because the first thing they did was sign Mitch Trubisky, okay? Well, even before they got Kenny Pickett. There were options where you just had Mason Rudolph be the guy, you draft somebody, or you sign someone mid-tier, or the fourth choice was you swing big and you go after Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. And nobody wanted to do that because it was just too damn expensive. Well, 2 teams figured out how to do it, and it didn't work out there. But the Steelers got both of them when they were later in their careers. So, they could have tried this already. They could have been earlier on the curve of either one of these guys, or maybe both if they wanted to. If they wanted to go after Rodgers in 2018 when he decided to stay one more year with the Packers, or they could have gone after Russell Wilson when he went to Denver.
Yeah, but those were smart moves because they didn't give Russell Wilson the entire house. But then
that's saying that you're kind of admitting that they're just not a good quarterback, but you're paying a good rate for only an average quarterback.
Well, they didn't hardly pay Russell Wilson money at all, and they aren't paying Aaron Rodgers very much. I think what you're seeing in the short term now is
good economics. I just don't know if it's good quarterbacking.
Well, but finding good quarterbacking is the challenge. And I think that's why so much is centered around, look, we're going to have, I don't know, 500,000 people ish in Pittsburgh next spring. And there's going to be a lot of talk about the show and all of that. But at its core, it all comes down to which quarterback is good enough and can the Steelers get their hands on him in that draft? What do they have to do to get him? They're going to do it. But that's
going to be beautiful because around here people are going to have their guy. People are going to pick their guy, and if they are kind of middle of the pack and they don't have the ability to climb up, and there's 5 guys because they've been in this spot before. They're in this spot 2 years in a row. There were 5 good first-round draftable offensive tackles, and they got the 5th one in Fautanu. There were 3-4 defensive end guys like Harmon, and they got the 4th one because of where they were drafting. So that was fine for the offensive and defensive line. People are just they got a first-round tackle, they needed one. Got a first-round defensive lineman, they needed one. If they get the 7th quarterback out of 7 choices and they just decide to pick him, that's not going to go over quite so easily.
Well, one, that'd be a good problem to have because that means
talking about.
One, that'd be a good problem to have because our original discussion about whether they can get themselves into a playoff position would be resolved because they would have done it. That's one. And 2, they have, I think, 13 draft picks. I think I have, that's the number I have in my mind for next year. Maybe I have that overestimated, but whatever it is,
right.
Whatever it is that they need to spend, they will spend. And there's always somebody who has a good young quarterback, but who hasn't taken yet. Let's say the Giants believe in Jackson Dart, who will take the multiple picks the Steelers grant to them in order to trade places. That will happen. But one of my concerns as I watch college football, and we're getting a little off topic here, is that some of the guys that we're saying, okay, these are the guys, aren't playing very well.
Right.
South Carolina's quarterback, I believe, is hurt. Klubnik at Clemson's 1-2. Arch has not played well at all, and such to the point where Arch Senior, I guess he's not senior, but Grandpop Arch, who once said that Arch would wait until 2027, is starting to look like he's right because Arch, the grandson, doesn't look like he's going to be good enough yet. So there are problems out there in the quarterback class. We'll see. Maybe October, November solve them, but right now it's not looking as promising as it did coming into the year.
All right, Mike, let's get to our keys to victory. Offense, defense, then we'll throw in one extra as well. I love my extra one that I'm going to get to later on today. It's not special teams. I'm going to leave the special teams. We'll get to the Caleb Johnson conversation with you maybe a little bit there. But my offensive key is, and at the time we are speaking, we're live right now if you're watching at 9:13 a.m. on Friday. If you're watching anytime later in advance of the game, we don't know about Christian Gonzalez yet, if he's going to play or not for the Patriots. The second-team All-Pro cornerback who's had injury problems but is a really good player for New England. He has practiced the first 2 days with the Patriots on a quote-unquote limited basis, but he was practicing, according to reports yesterday, with some of the starters. So if he plays, Mike, my key on offense is remember the Jets' game plan because Gonzalez played against DK Metcalf last year. He broke up one pass and limited Metcalf to 2 catches for 10 yards on the other 3 targets that were thrown in his direction. So he did a really good job on DK, akin to what Sauce Gardner did in game 1 against the Jets. And if you remember, 30 of 33 snaps that DK and Sauce were on the field together, Sauce was on him. The other 3 times, Rodgers threw to him twice, immediately, step back throws right at the line of scrimmage, run Roman Wilson out to block Sauce because he was covering him, run Skoranek out to block Sauce because for some reason I'm still trying to figure out the Jets wasted a snap with Sauce and Ben Skoranek, but Skoranek ran out and blocked him, and they just threw the ball to DK and said, run that way.
Yes.
Do that. Anytime you see Gonzalez not on DK, get DK the ball, bubble screens, wide receiver screens, quick hitches, whatever it is, and then let him run after the catch because they lost that formula last week, frankly, against the Seattle secondary that was banged up, Rick Woolen wasn't playing well. And for as much as we talked about what the run game wasn't, what pass blocking wasn't, what Aaron Rodgers might not have been, I can't believe those wide receivers didn't get open more last week.
Well, they had limited opportunities when you think about it, because such a large portion of the passing game was screen type plays, and we'll get to that in some of our discussion. But for me, the key to this game is, and I know that the Patriot secondary isn't elite, but I'm still going back to first trying to establish the run. And when I say establish the run, there are a lot of people who think that if you're running the ball 17 times, and this goes back to the Bengals debacle, Bengals 2 last year. If you're running the ball 17 times on first down, that's establishing the run. It's not. Establishing the run is it works, do it again. It works, do it again. It works, do it again. Not it doesn't work, but we're going to keep at it. So if it doesn't work like 5 times in a row, then figure out something else. But if you're doing it well, and if you look at the Seattle game, they did it well early in the game. Jaylen Warren had a nice start to that game, but then they started messing around with the screen game, and it really fouled up everything. And connected to that, when I say establish the run, I'm not saying that, okay, so you get 9-8 yards on first down. That means you absolutely have to run on second because it's second and short, and we should be able to convert that. No, like if you're around the 40-yard line, 45, whatever, take a shot. They don't do it, Tim. If they get the second and 1, they're going for 3rd and 1. That's because then they're in their element because they're in 3rd and 1 so many times.
Well, I'll cheat a little bit on myself here and give you one of my stats, and that's Aaron Rodgers' average air yards per completion is 3.3. It's the low. It was going into Monday night anyway. I don't know if the Monday night game affected this, but that was the lowest in the National Football League.
Yeah, they've got to do this. They've got to air it out a little bit, and that's a huge problem with what they're doing. And the last thing I'll say about this, the multiple screens, they ran a play on Sunday where they faked the handoff left to Jaylen Warren and had Jonnu come in motion to the right side. So Jalen's going left on a fake handoff and Jonnu's going in motion to set up a screen on the right side. And Seattle had every element of that play, not just covered, but blown up. That the handoff to Warren that would have happened if it were real, blown up for a 4-yard loss. The screen on the opposite side that they threw to Jonnu, no block, nobody got in front, and ultimately Rodgers had to throw it at Jonnu's feet. So that nonsense play has got to be torn up and thrown away.
Let's get to my defensive key and your defensive key, Mike, because we know that the run defense stinks right now. It's been talked about. I'm not going to say it's been talked to death because it's so important. We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep focusing on it until it's fixed, and so do they. But as far as the run game goes and stopping opposing running backs and the quarterbacks when it's games like Justin Fields, and we'll get to that nuance with Drake May in just a second here, but at least on the plays when you load up to stop the run, especially against a team like Seattle last week, where Sam Darnold is not going to try to run against you. When you are loading up to stop whoever is in the offensive backfield at running back, at least do that better. Kenneth Walker for the Seattle Seahawks last week, 8 attempts, 66 yards, 8.3 yards per carry with a 75% successful run rate. Those are according to Next Gen and Pro Football Focus numbers combined. That was the highest amount of attempts, best amount of yards per carry, and highest success rate running against a stacked box. So those numbers were against 8-man fronts. The Steelers stacked the box, and they still couldn't bring Kenneth Walker down. It's like we could have leaned on the excuse that it was Jalen Hurts and Saquon that were causing them problems because there's a running quarterback there, or Lamar and Henry because there's a running quarterback there, or Breece and Justin Fields because there's a running quarterback there. We're talking about the stadium knows that the Seahawks are running. The Seahawks know that the Seahawks are running. The Steelers know that the Seahawks are running. They know who's getting the ball, and they still let them get 8.3 yards per carry against stacked boxes. That's what's bothersome.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that, Tim, is that even with all of that, they actually made some progress. I mean, they were very poor on Sunday against the run, but they were better than they were against the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, like, but, if you look at the math where it washes out there, Mike, it's like if you take away Fields' runs and you look at the big hit that Darnold hit for Jackson Smith and Jigba, I mean, like, there's the difference.
But I'm not just talking about stats. I'm not just talking about total stats and all that sort of thing, because late in the game, they were horrendous. And that's why I say they were not good.
Yeah, the record-setting 3rd and 19 run on a 3rd and goal that the NFL had never seen before. That one, yeah,
exactly. That and others that followed, and maybe preceded by a little on that drive, on the drive to get to those, to get to 24-17. Those sort, or excuse me, 21 to 14, not 24-17. 21 to get to 21 to 14 after the kickoff, after the pick disaster in the end zone.
Right. Calvin Austin.
They were early in the game. They were having some success, but the problem was that after they stuffed,
right?
Yeah, after they stuffed run, the run defense, they were able to stack up the box and get some success and get them to second and long or 3rd and long. The back of the secondary was a disaster. Again, I go back to what I talked about early in the show. They don't have a concept. You keep getting beaten over the middle by simple, quick routes. Jalen Ramsey is lined up against those guys, and they're turning once and they're gone. And I don't mean gone for a touchdown, but gone for a first down. Those 3rd and 9s are killing the Steelers. They killed them against the Jets, and they killed them against the Seahawks over and over and over again. Jalen Ramsey has made some great plays so far. The picks, the big hit against Garrett Wilson. He had some big plays as well against the Seahawks, but getting beaten on those simple routes. And I'm not sure that he's at fault there, because I know that on that one touchdown that was similar to the touchdown against the Jets, that it appears that Terrell Austin is making a big deal about what's happening beyond the corners, that what's happening behind them isn't working. But that element of the defense, if that continues to be a problem, Tim, they can't beat anybody. I mean, they not defensively. I mean, maybe they could outscore them, but they can't beat them in a typical 24-21 game.
Well, my bonus key here, and I know you're going to get to special teams. I usually like to throw something special teams related in here. I'll let you handle that. We'll get to the Caleb Johnson thing here. But my bonus key, this is a memo for Broderick Jones. Broderick, I love you. You're trying your hardest. I still got faith in you. I'm not giving up on you. It was a little bit better last week. I don't know if it was significantly better, but if it was only because last week, the week before in New York, was significantly worse, but it was better. So I'm not giving up on Broderick Jones entirely yet. I had too much emotionally invested in him. I love him as a guy. The fact that he told us, and I can swear here, so it's okay, that last week's game was a shit show. That was a great quote, and it gave me a layup column. I still love Broderick Jones. So I'm warning Broderick Jones, if he's not aware. All right, bonus key. Look who's officiating the game today, Broderick. If you're watching this on game day, if you're listening to this on game day, or if you're watching live right now, and I hope you're not because you should be studying film on what happened against the Denver Broncos last year in week 2 on your drive where you got 3 penalties, because this is that crew. This is the officiating crew, the Scott Novak crew that gave Broderick Jones 3 penalties on one drive and flagged him to the bench in Denver last year, has this game. So Broderick, please, be careful. Don't hold on for quite so long. Aaron Rodgers is used to running around like a chicken with his head cut off already after 2 weeks. Just let him do it. Don't get the holds. Don't flinch and get a false start, because they're looking for 77. They will remember you from the last game for sure.
Part of what has gone right for Broderick is that he has not been penalized. Pre-snap has not had a problem. Not been called a bunch for holding. Some would say that's because he's not close enough to the guy he's trying to block. But honestly, I really don't think that he's played that badly to this point. I think they have bigger issues on the line than Broderick. Faltanu still, now again, he's basically a rookie. He still has some progress to make on the right side.
I thought he had a rough game against the Seahawks. Forget the other tackle.
And Seumalo, at this point, no one's saying this, but I think Isaac Seumalo has been the worst Steelers offensive lineman through 2 games. He was really poor in the Seahawks game and has to be better, especially when you're playing. You're the vet. You're out there playing with 4 guys who are second year or who are second year players or third year in the case of Broderick. But when you consider he's now a left tackle, you've got a first year left tackle, you've got a second year center, second year right guard, first year right tackle. The vet is supposed to be the best of that group. He can't be the poorest. It's got to be better. My bonus key is discussing how the Steelers handle the kickoff return game. You know, they keep around players like Ben Skoranek and Connor Hayward and others because they are exceptional special teams players. Miles Killebrew. They cover great, and that's important. I totally am on board with their concept of that. But why are they okay with just having some guy, whoever looks like, oh, it's your turn, return kickoffs? Why don't they prioritize that more? It doesn't make any sense. They were last in the NFL last year in kickoff return yardage, last in average per return. And they were more than a yard behind.
It looked like they were changing their mind from the team that used to have Najee Davenport back there to the team that went out and got Cordero Patterson 45 seconds after the rule changed. You know, like right. It's like, oh, okay, a light went on, and then Patterson showed up, and he didn't show up. You know, yes. they hardly used him. He was hardly healthy, and it was just a waste. And I think they featured him more as a running back than they did as a kick returner. Yes. And it just that drove me insane.
And now you're putting Caleb Johnson back there, and I watched him in the preseason. Guys who were at camp watched him in camp, and then we watched him in the first game. And every single data point told you this guy's not any good at this. He doesn't believe he's any good at this, and he's not any good at it. And it goes from fumbling in the game 1, but being fortunate bounce keeps it in his area and he's able to recover it himself, to the return that he attempted where he tried to go across the field. And sometimes kick returners do that, Tim. They'll try to use their speed to go across the field and get the edge. But Caleb wasn't trying to go across the field with speed. He was sort of half jogging, and what he was doing was looking for a hole. Like, is there any hole out there? And he winds up getting knocked for a poor return. And then comes the disaster where he misunderstands the rule and allows the ball to sit in the end zone unguarded. Look, I was like 9 years old, Tim, when I learned that a kickoff is a free ball. And I know that the colleges have changed that to an extent, but I knew when I was very young that a kickoff, that's the whole concept behind the onside kick.
I remember watching the San Francisco game with Barry Foster, and I said, why is he standing there? Doesn't he have to go get that?
A lot of people remembered that Barry Foster. Now, I think Barry Foster's subsequent experience shows that one really foolish play supersedes the people who were literally calling, and I'm not talking about just fans, but some in the media who were literally calling for the Steelers to cut him as a result of that play. It's nonsense. You don't cut him. You just stop forcing him to do something he's not comfortable doing, and he's not.
2 years later, Barry Foster led the AFC in rushing and was an All-Pro twice.
Exactly. So get him out of that spot, and we know that he will be out of that spot, and get somebody in there that knows what they're doing. It's not inconsequential to start at the 35-yard line versus the 25. And how I know this is because every week I see the Steelers start at the 25 while their opponents are starting at the 35. That goes to the kick coverage issues we've talked about before, but we're not going to reiterate that. Let's just stick with the offensive a part of it.
All right, I want to get to some comments about Caleb Johnson and the run game, the running backs in our stat pack. I'll do that in just a second, but a reminder, people can't comment if you like. Just jump in and post either on Facebook or on YouTube. We'll try to get to some comments before the end of the show. Like I said, it might be a little abbreviated today, but I'll try to get some comments before we wrap up. And we will do a show next week before the Ireland game. We are off the week after that because of the bye week. Let's get to the other sideline segment, Mike, where we usually try to find a theme to this week's opponent. And for New England, this is more like a Steelers-New England thing together. If you look at the Steelers' history in New England, it is awful. Like, they have one win in Gillette Stadium. They opened up that place in 2002 after the Steelers lost to New England here in the 2001 AFC Championship, and Hines Ward was saying the wrong team won and all this other stuff, and New England blew their doors off. That was the beginning of the end for Cordell. A couple weeks later, we're watching Tommy Maddox at quarterback. And then 2 years later, Ben Roethlisberger was the quarterback, and it didn't get any better in New England. They never beat Brady and Belichick in New England. They had one win in Gillette Stadium, one, and it was Matt Castle at quarterback. Right. And that was a huge win for the Steelers because it allowed them to beat the Ravens by one game in the North and win the division and get home field against the Ravens eventually in the AFC Championship game. So that was a huge win. The Patriots, it was a huge loss for them because they finished 11-5 and missed the playoffs. They were 11-5 in a six-team AFC playoff bracket and missed the friggin' playoffs. That's how loaded that conference was. And they're 11-5 with Matt Castle. So, like, when people question Belichick, I always remind them they went 11-5 with Matt Castle, and he got to won an AFC playoff game with Vinny Testaverde. For those reasons alone, he should have a statue like Tom out there at some point or another. But, the Steelers' history in New England is still fairly checkered. It's not just Gillette Stadium. Like, they only have 4 wins in their history against the Patriots on the road. They had that Fog Bowl playoff loss, if you might remember.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So their 4 wins. They had the one game against Castle. It's their only one in Gillette. In 97, Cordell beat them there in an overtime game where they got down 14-0 and came back and won. And then you have to go back to the 70s, Mike. In 74 and 79, they've won in New England. So for as little as they have won in New England, they have 4 victories in their history in Foxborough. Whether it was Schaefer Stadium, Sullivan Stadium, Foxborough with an O Stadium, or Gillette Stadium. Those 4 victories all came in years that they made at least the AFC Championship, and 3 of them came in years where they won a Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen this year. In fact, it's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen this year. But maybe it's an indication that at least when they win in New England, good things happen, and who knows, they can find their way into the playoffs at the least, because that's where my barometer is for success this year.
Because of our graphic, I can discuss whether or not the Steelers' history in New England is worse than the Manilow song "Weekend in New England." I think that's question. I
don't know if that's where Chris was going with that. I don't know if Chris.
I think that's where he was. I think he was. But anyway,
there's a Neil Diamond movie coming out. By the way, did you see that? Like the guy who's a Neil Diamond impersonator.
Yes, I did see that. Yes, Song Sung Blue. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's as good. They seem to believe in it because they're putting it on Christmas Day, so they think they have something. One thing the Steelers could do Sunday to maybe reawaken those 2008.
It's Hugh Jackman who's Neil Diamond.
Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson.
Yeah.
One thing the Steelers could do to resurrect those 2008 ghosts is maybe dress James Harrison, because he was monstrous that day. That was the game that probably made him DPOY that year. He was phenomenal. What I was going to say is that the Patriots are struggling to run the ball almost as much or about the same as the Steelers. And one thing that you think about, though, is that whereas the Steelers can't face the Steelers' run defense to get better that way, except in practice, the Patriots get to face the Steelers' run defense. So I think that if you look at it, New England has a variety of backs that they've used. Their most effective backs on a per carry basis have been the reserves, and that's going to be interesting. Do they change their rotation up? Travion Henderson has been very good per carry. Antonio Gibson, who once gained 1,000 yards, very good per carry. They have 2 guys. The Steelers would love to have one guy maybe who's playing a bunch and averaging 4.5 yards a carry. So they may change up their rotation a little bit. They may keep it as deep as they do. The Steelers have to be ready for some fresh legs in the running game, and obviously need to do a better job of filling the gaps. One of the things that's interesting, you'll see sometimes on Twitter some film of Peyton Wilson getting steamrolled by an offensive tackle. And I understand, like, if the offensive tackle gets into that hole, what is Peyton Wilson going to do? But I have seen on multiple occasions when he has put himself into blocks instead of trying to fill the gap where the running back might come. And you can't allow that to happen because there's not enough help coming from behind you. First of all, there's only one line of defense after you. And second of all, they're not Deshaun Elliott. So you've got to find a way to do a better job of redirecting the running back, either bringing him down yourself or forcing him into traffic that doesn't. You don't allow the hole to open by taking on a block that you don't have to take on. And that's one of the many problems Peyton Wilson has had as a run-stuffing linebacker to date. They've got to get that cleaned up. He's not the only problem with the run defense. We've talked about Keanu Benton, et cetera, but he's a big problem with it right now.
All right, time now to get to our stack pack. This is where we have the most telling stats heading into game day. You want to start with this one, Mike?
Yeah, for me, the number is 46.43. That is the third down conversion rate for Steelers opponents through 2 weeks into the season. It ranks 23rd in the NFL. Both of the Steelers opponents topped 40%. New England is 14th in the league in third down conversion rate. So if you see that popping, if you see them starting to excel at that, you know that the Steelers' defensive issues aren't being addressed. That's they have to find a way not only to get themselves into more third and longs. They did a little better at that for periods of the Seattle game. I thought the one thing that Mike Tomlin said in his press conference that was indisputable and kind of an admission, he doesn't like to admit to weakness, so to speak, but he talked about, I don't know that he used the word fatigue, but that concept with the defense in the second half. Well, he acknowledged that. Yeah. Which honestly, we can get into the punt concept, but he acknowledged the fatigue that took over. And that part of it is a factor. But even when they were doing well early in the game at forcing run stuffs or incomplete passes, they were getting beaten on third down, even third and long. So when they lose first down or second down and wind up in third and short, they're not stopping it because of their run stuffing problems. And when they get into third and long, they're not stopping it in large part because of their secondary issues at this point.
All right, so my stat pack, I'm going to get a little texture to this before I get to it, because this does dovetail with your conversation about Caleb Johnson. And, you know, why he's getting the touches that he's getting is because they can't get him on the field to be the starting running back. And maybe he wasn't brought here to be the starting running back in September. I kind of think he was brought here to be the starting running back by Thanksgiving. I do. I mean, like, this was not supposed to be a project pick. All we heard is what a perfect fit he is for Arthur Smith and his system. You can be a successful rookie running back. This guy was not a unmolded piece of clay that was going to take time to construct, like the statue of David. He was supposed to be relatively plug and play as a running back. And we made the comps before to what he would have to be a logical statistical replacement for Najee Harris. And maybe he was never going to get there. Like, I don't think he was ever going to get to these 1,600 yards from scrimmage that Najee had in his rookie season, or even 1,000 yards that Najee had every single year he was a Pittsburgh Steeler. He may not have gotten there for various reasons, like them throwing more this year, them bringing in Gainwell, them having Jalen Warren, him not being the true starter that he, I think, eventually will be. I think they still want him to be that. But because he was so bad in the preseason and the second half of training camp after he flashed initially, they had to get him on the field just to get his feet wet in the kick return department. And they couldn't put him on the field as a running back, but for 2 or 3 carries here or there in the first couple games. So that has really screwed up the running back rotation, because I think the hope was that they would have him as sort of the base back pretty early in the season. Warren would get tons of snaps as the third down back, where he excelled when Najee was here. More snaps as the first and second down back, sure. But in those instances, that's where you sneak in Kenneth Gainwell a little bit.
Right.
All right. So that was the thinking, right? Let me give you some of these numbers to show you how off the rails that's gotten, because Caleb Johnson, the third wheel in this equation, hasn't been able to get his spokes and the tires put together. 43 and 34. That's the number of pass plays for Kenneth Gainwell versus the number of pass plays for Jaylen Warren. Under no circumstances should Jaylen Warren have fewer passing down reps than anybody on this roster. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. Elite in terms of catching the ball and turning it into something. Elite at blitz pickup. I mean, I think Le'Veon Bell is the greatest blitz pickup guy I've ever seen, but Warren is in his category.
And you saw what he can do once he gets the ball in his hands in open grass last week against the Seahawks. That was the best offensive play of the game for the Steelers, and maybe the play of the game, perhaps the Herbig interception and deflection from Hayward notwithstanding. But here's the other stat that goes along with this. Well, there's two more. Here's the next one. 61 and 55. The snaps for Warren versus the snaps for Gainwell. It shouldn't be that close.
Oh,
like Jaylen Warren can be his own third down back is my point here. Like, this should be more about you get Gainwell a series to give Warren a break, but you don't take Warren off the field on first and second down so Gainwell can be the third down back, because you're replicating talents, you're replicating skill sets, and Warren does it better, and you're cutting your nose off to spite your face. And the last one that goes along with this is 12 and 8. Those are the carries for Kenneth Gainwell so far this season versus his first 5 games of last year when he was backing up Saquon. And that's probably better, because like he should be catching the ball and eating up blitzes. That's what he should be doing. That's what he did when they wanted to give Barkley a break last year in in Philadelphia. And I feel like I'm bagging on Kenneth Gainwell. I'm not. I really like the guy. I think he was a great signing. I love the addition. I think I love the fact that he's here. He's useful on special teams. He should be the one returning kicks, not Caleb Johnson in the first place. I have nothing against Kenneth Gainwell. I do have something against him getting this much playing time, especially if it means that Warren isn't.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. If they don't feel like Caleb Johnson is ready, then Warren has to carry a heavier load. They're the ones that decided that Najee didn't fit, that he wasn't worth a measly $7 million. And I know it's not my $7 million. And I know $7 million isn't measly to a lot of people, but in the NFL, it's kind of measly for a 1,000-yard back. Not a one-time 1,000-yard back, but a 4-time 1,000-yard back.
Right.
So yeah, they're the ones that decided that. And they're the ones that decided that Caleb Johnson was the ideal replacement for him. So you've got to ride with that. And Gainwell was not signed to be sharing time because he's not capable of excelling in that role. We've now seen 2 games worth of evidence of that. And the Eagles won a Super Bowl without ever trying to suggest that he was.
All right, time now for Who Will Take Flight. This is where we talk about Mike's Beer Bar, again, on the North Shore. We are brought to you by Mike's. Head there anytime you're going out to watch Pittsburgh sporting events on the North Shore, right across the street from PNC Park. I'll remind you that mercifully, we're heading to the last series of the Pittsburgh Pirates 2025 season at PNC Park. And oh boy, the A's are in town. And if that's not enough reason for you to go, let me tell you that Mike's has 500 available craft beers, and you're not forced to go across the street to the park. You can if you want. Go ahead. They got beer there too. Mike's has 500 available craft beers, including all the pumpkins, all the harvests, all that is out. I was out on North Shore after going to Mike's last weekend, following the Duquesne game, saw the Backyard Brawl, went to swung by Southern Tier for their Pumpkin Fest. They've got their pumpkins out, and I think Mike's has a bunch of them over at his place. So you can check out all their selections of beer, get yourself a steak and a stone, and go there on Monday night for Flight Night. They have flights available on Monday at special prices. You can sample all the beers you want. And it's a great Monday Night Football game this week It's Baltimore and Detroit. So that one is definitely worth checking out. Who's your guy that's going to take flight for both teams this week, Mike?
Yeah, for me, it's got to be Pat Freiermuth for the Steelers. One of the things that was really absent, it's been absent the first two games, but it was particularly notable in the Seattle game, was the absence of basic tight end routes. 1-2 step drops, and find Pat Freiermuth over the middle. There was a lot of consternation about him not catching the downfield ball, and some of that came from Aaron Rodgers, that Freiermuth was unable to catch early in the game. He should have caught it, but would have been an elite catch. But I just want to see him make basic catches. I want to see him run down 5-6 steps, turn around, and catch a tight end pass. I want to see Darnell Washington do that. I wouldn't mind seeing Jonnu Smith doing that, but if you want to do other things with him to draw attention away from the other two so you can do this and get 5 or 6 yards and get the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands and get the pass rush on its heels a little bit so that they're not constantly coming full blast because the ball's going over their heads right away anyway. All of these things were missing from Sunday's game, and I don't know why you have 3 terrific tight ends if you're not going to use them. And as I mentioned before, Jonnu's role as a tight end is a little bit different. It can be a little bit different, so take advantage of that. Darnell is block first. Use him at times as a receiver, but Pat Freiermuth has shown now over multiple seasons that you put him over the middle, he's going to catch the ball, he's going to finish the play, and he's going to get you yards. And they are not doing that. And if they continue to not do that, they're going to continue to struggle on offense.
My Steeler guy is going to be Jaylen Warren. I just changed my mind. I wrote down Jack Sawyer. I think I said that one last week, so I don't want to replicate. I just went on that Jaylen Warren rant, so I'm talking myself into it has to be Jaylen Warren. So he's my guy who is going to take flight for the Steelers. I think they're going to realize their mistakes. It sounded like Mike Tomlin was sort of talking about that on a couple of occasions this week, that they might lean into Warren more, which I think is a wise thing to do for all the reasons I just pointed out. So I'm going to say, and by the way, Sawyer, he is going to get more reps. Highsmith, his injury continues to linger. So looking at his play last week, I thought he had his moments as the game went along. For a guy who is supposed to be a little different in that 3-4 edge position for the Steelers because he's stout against the run and he's bigger. That was kind of the thinking with Leal too, but it just never worked out. If it's going to work out with Sawyer, he's got to be better against the run. He also gets blocked too easily. He has a hard time getting off of NFL blocks. I think he's a little bit better in the pass rush game, actually, from what we've seen so far. Now, TJ Watt, like he said, was the biggest reason why he got that sack last week. That was a great play by Watt to flush the passer into Sawyer. As Sawyer said, it was a hockey assist. So, but I do like Sawyer a lot. There's intrigue there in what he can be. He's just got to get off blocks. Like, for instance, that clip that went around the internet this week from Brian Baldinger. Did you see it, Mike?
Not sure if I saw this one.
The one where the Seattle fullback took out both Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen at the same time and turned them into bowling pins.
Yeah, I did not see that.
Yeah, the fullback comes to the hole.
Now I'm happy I didn't.
Yeah, and he takes out both the inside linebackers with one block. And everybody's like, oh, my God, look at the inside linebackers, because we've been crushing the inside linebackers nonstop and for reasons that are worthy, like we just talked about. But no one's talking about how Sawyer got completely walled off on the left side and was the other half to why there was a giant seam that I think it was Kenneth Walker took off through. So he's got to be better, but I think Warren is my Steeler who will take flight. My Patriot who's going to take flight is Kayshon Boutte. Kayshon Boutte. And the reason I say that is so far he is the top wide receiver for the Patriots, and I got his numbers right here. 7 catches, 119 yards, 1 touchdown. If you look at what Jackson Smith and Jigba did last week, very similar to what Garrett Wilson did the week before for the Jets. Both of those guys, the primary targets for those two teams, and the Steelers couldn't stop them. I think this underscores what you were saying earlier in the show, Mike, about some of the concerns in the back third of the defense, getting away from the run-stuffing element in the front 7. They've got to do better against other teams' top receivers. And I think they got to get Drake May better weapons in New England. I think that's the next step of their evolution. But I think they have to be careful, the Steelers do, of just whoever the primary pass catcher is, because that guy has gotten loose each of the first 2 weeks.
You know, Stephon Diggs has already had a pretty big week. If you follow the People magazine style of journalism, Stephon's girlfriend, Cardi B, a great musician, announced she's pregnant with their child. It will be his first. So big week for Stephon. And what better way for him to celebrate than to get into all those
secondary,
all those gaps that Jackson Smith and Jigba found, and Cooper Kupp found, and Garrett Wilson found. So I think he was my pick to fly this week. I do think that the Steelers really need to work out their safety play, assignments, personnel. It's all up in the air right now until Deshaun Elliott is ready to go. Elliott will be out there when he's healthy and 100% or close to 100%. When he's designated to return, Elliott's going to be on the field, and he will help mitigate some of the issues in the run game. He's a terrific hitter. He's a terrific last line of defense. But it's not just his absence that's causing problems in the secondary. So we'll see whether Stephon can take advantage of that.
One quick thing about the Patriots before we move on to some NFL notes. I don't know how much they're planning to run Drake May on purpose, but I wonder if they're thinking about it. Like, they don't do that a ton. He can move. He's good improving when he moves and, getting his own yards when he has to from a scramble element or when things break down. But I wonder if they're going to try to design a few runs for him because there's been success there in the past with Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts in recent games for the Steelers. That's just something to watch. Let's go around the NFL. Couple of league notes here, Mike. I had to laugh at the CBS broadcast crew. Now, the Steelers are getting a good crew. I love Ian Eagle. I know Ian, one of my favorite guys in the business. He's fantastic at what he does for both college basketball, the Nets, and, of course, the NFL as well. So I'm happy anytime Ian's on the call for the Steelers. I thought Watt did a pretty good job in his first game with Ian. It's funny how he always refers to TJ Watt as TJ Watt. He never just says Watt, and he refuses to say TJ because he doesn't want to sound like he's talking about his little brother. You can tell he's very conscious of that, and he's trying to avoid that. So, of course, they give him 2 Steeler games in the first 3 weeks. But anyway, the funny part is they put the first crew, Romo and Nance, on Bengals and Vikings. And now Romo and Nance are calling Carson Wentz and Jake Browning. Because this quarterback thing, Mike, is not just those two guys, but I mean, you look up and down the boards, there's 5 notable starters that are injured already.
That's amazing. But let me that dovetails to my point about the Bengals. It's really interesting that the Bengals with Joe Burrow, the constant refrain has been, gosh, and he's always getting hurt and it's ruining their seasons. Over the last 3 seasons, they're 3 games over 500 with Joe Burrow as a starter. So I'm not saying he's not fantastic, but they got bigger problems in Cincinnati than just Joe Burrow being hurt. And Jake Browning finished Sunday's game and finished it very well, and they were able to outrun the Jaguars on Sunday. His record is not bad. In 2023, when Burrow went down with a significant injury, because Joe played all 17 games last year, and as I looked at it, I don't think Jake took any snaps. I mean, Burrow was the guy, and they missed the playoffs. When Browning played in 2023, the team was 4-3 with him as a starter. So he's not necessarily this, oh wow, they're done kind of quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. And he may
you don't know how many times I've heard the name Ryan Finley this week from Steelers fans. So, I'm aware. I'm just saying it's harder for the Bengals to win 9 games. I'm not saying it's hard for the Bengals to beat the Steelers at least once. There's a difference in those two thoughts. It's going to be hard for them to win 9 games without Burrow, but absolutely the Steelers could lose to Jake Browning. They lost to Anthony Brown and Tyler Huntley with the Ravens when Lamar was out. Anything is possible there.
Yeah. I think you can't write the Bengals off. He could maybe keep them afloat until Burrow is able to come back. But obviously the defense is so problematic. They were 28th in total D last year. They're 16th now, but they played the Browns. So small sample size.
Yeah. Something else from the AFC. You're already seeing, and I kind of alluded to this earlier about the top-heavy nature of the AFC. The teams at the top are very good. It's going to be someone's going to back into that 7th spot. You're going to see a team that gets in as the 7th AFC team. We're saying, how did those guys get in? Like, the Chiefs are 0-2, and I'm not even fretting. Now, they got to win. They got to beat the Giants this week for sure. But I'm not fretting about them. I still think they're getting in as a wild card. Them and Houston are 2 teams in the AFC that better win this week.
Yeah, 100%. My other note is on the Colts and their amazing 2-0 start. Now, the end of that Denver game was really weird. The leverage penalty against Denver. Leverage is leverage. Leverage isn't I tap the guy in front of me and then I jump. I mean, that's not leverage. That's location. You have to push down and raise yourself up, or literally use your limbs, your lower limbs to step on them, or use it. You need to climb up. That's what the leverage penalty was invented for. It wasn't invented for, I tapped the guy just to sort of get my bearings on where I am and then rise up. Yeah. That is not leverage. And I thought that was a terrible flag. But it did get the Colts to 2-0, and they had to play well to play against the Denver team that right now seems to be very much on the rise. They had to play well to be where they are. And Daniel Jones, when he came out of New York, everybody called him Danny Dimes. But now in Indiana, they're calling him Indiana Jones. Really like that. I think that works a lot. And, one of the things that I said.
Does that mean opposing fans are going to throw rubber snakes at him?
That would be a good idea. There you go.
It's better than what's being thrown in WNBA games. I can tell you that.
Yeah, we don't want to have a repeat of that. But
did you hear? I don't know which game it was. One of those was thrown last week.
Oh.
And one of the broadcast crews saw it and thought it was a flag, so they put the penalty graphic up.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
I don't know which game it was, but I heard about that on Monday.
Well, I was going to say that one of the things I thought about when the Steelers got through the Justin Fields idea, and I think it was probably too late at that point, because I think Daniel Jones had already signed by the time the Steelers settled on Aaron Rodgers. But my thought process when that developed was, I watched the Steelers play the Jets in prime time, and I watched the Steelers play the Giants in prime time. And there was no question in my mind which of the 2 quarterbacks gave them more trouble. And it was partly because Jones has the ability to move. He is not like, there's only one Lamar and there's only one Justin Fields, but Daniel Jones can really move. And I thought that if the Steelers were not going to go in Justin Fields' direction, that Jones would have been a nice addition. And you're seeing now why he was able to beat out Anthony Richardson. It wasn't just a capitulation on Richardson. It was Jones showing that you get out of the Giants situation, you got a lot to repair, but so far he looks terrific.
All right, let's get some comments here, Mike. I got to give you my favorite comment of the week, okay? This came from a guy. I got this on social media. His name's Michael. He says, ask Tomlin if he would play the big tight end Washington at inside linebacker. And my response to him was, why would I do that? And he said, because we need a Levon Kirkland type athlete to help stop the run. So I promise, Michael, I will ask Mike Tomlin if he's going to move Darnell Washington to inside linebacker. And in that same sentence, I will also ask him if the Penguins should move Chris Letang to wing and if Paul Skeens should become a hitter full time. I will complete the holy trinity of position moving questions on your behalf.
The irony of that is that Levon Kirkland, this is a true story. So this takes you back to my days at the Pittsburgh Press. And a lot of times, this is before the internet. This is before talk radio was a 24/7 thing. At that point, I think we had Myron and Stan and not much else. And so a lot of times to sort of vent or talk to someone with some authority, readers would call the press sports department and to try to talk sports. And one day I answered the phone and a guy was furious that the Steelers had drafted Levon Kirkland in the 2nd round. And just absolutely apoplectic. And I don't know what happened to that guy as Levon Kirkland became one of the great Steelers ever. I don't know, but I never forgot that. But the reason he was furious is because Levon was about my size, height-wise, maybe a little taller, but that was why he was convinced that Levon couldn't be a great player. So our commenter now is comparing Darnell Washington, who we call Mount Washington for a reason, to Levon Kirkland, who was so short that once upon a time a Steelers fan was apoplectic that the Steelers would even deign to draft him.
When I was going back and looking through some of those Patriots stats that I gave you earlier about the Steelers losing there, Levon Kirkland, he was the guy who made the interception at the end of the game where Mike Vrabel, now the Patriots coach and former Patriot great linebacker that started his career in Pittsburgh. If you remember that game that I told you about where Cordell beat them in overtime, the Patriots then beat the Dolphins in Miami to win the division, beat Miami in New England to win their first playoff game, came to Pittsburgh, and then lost 7-6 to the Steelers because Vrabel sacked Bledsoe at midfield. But the Steelers kind of screwed up the clock management, shockingly, back then with Cowher. And the Patriots got the ball back, and Bledsoe had time for one more heave down the field. And Levon Kirkland was like 60 yards down the field in coverage and made the interception. At that size, that weight, like 290 or whatever he was back then, going back to make an interception. I remember that play from Kirkland, and I always think of that fondly. I love Levon Kirkland. Dylan says, would any coaches on Tomlin's staff be hired at their position on any other team? Boy,
Wow.
that's deep thoughts.
Well, I mean,
Austin would get a job as a secondary coach. I don't know if he'd get a coordinator's job.
I mean, a couple of their guys had jobs on other teams and came to the Steelers.
Smith, I guess, could get another offensive coordinator's job. Todd Haley did.
Yeah. But Arthur's already been through 3 teams calling plays. And so I'm not sure how much it's a great question. Look, I've been a Tomlin defender, and I will defend him once more before the end.
Because I got one more comment here that you're going to have to defend Tomlin on coming up here in a second.
But what I was going to say is the one area where I've been hypercritical of him, or not hyper because it's been accurate, area I've been critical of him is in hiring assistant coaches. He's not done a good enough job at that. It's a weakness. It's a blind spot for him. Every coach has different blind spots. Even the best have different blind spots, and that's his kryptonite. He just doesn't do well in hiring other coaches. There are theories about that. I have a few, but that's a problem. And so our commenter he may not be 100% he or she may not be 100% accurate. I didn't see the name on that, but they are 100% on with the money with the point they're making.
All right, here's the last one from this is the Tomlin one. Comes from Patrick. I like this one. He says, Tomlin is like Mike Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. He's stuck in the past with only one design of his house. Did you see the Brady Bunch movie where the Mike Brady character designed everything because he was an architect that looked like the house in the Brady's Bunch? And it was like a hamburger joint. It was a gas station. It was like a bounce house or something. It's a great line. I think they tried to change things personnel-wise, but big picture of who they are and how they operate, no, they haven't changed.
Well, I think you don't change how you operate as an organization. And that's why Mike Tomlin is still the coach. One of the reasons why Mike Tomlin is still the coach, because the organization has valued stability and the belief that if you stay in the hunt, then you're going, that eventually you're going to break through. And the idea of, one of the things that has driven me crazy over the last 25 years or so is the idea of blow it up. Blow it up is the most ridiculous thing in sports. You know what happens when you blow it up? You have a lot of pieces laying around and it takes you forever to put it back together. You don't blow up what's working. You blow up what's already blown up. You don't have to blow it up because it's already in pieces. You don't do that. And I'll give you an example. In this week's game, Mike Vrabel now, the Steelers have to deal with a capable NFL head coach, where obviously he replaced he's the second successor to one of the great NFL coaches of all time. But in Tennessee, they had 4 consecutive significant years. They went 9-7, 9-7, 11-5, 12-5. In Mike Vrabel's first 4 years, they had a couple off years, and they said, "Okay, we're done." And they've gone 3-16 since. blow it up is not the answer. Get better with the people, with the things you're doing right, and complement it. That's how you get there. There were people who thought Purdue should blow it up in men's basketball after they lost in the first round to a 16 seed. They played in the NCAA championship game 12 months later. That's why you don't blow it up. And so that's why I'm a Tomlin defender. I said when they had an OC opening that he should not even have had a say other than, yeah, I can work with this guy. But it should have been hired by Weidel, by Rooney, and by Kahn. Those guys should have been the ones that made the OC hire. And Mike should have been in the meetings, and he should not have had the designation because he has shown that weakness. But don't give up on what he does really well, which is get his guys to play hard, play together, and ultimately prevail more often than not.
All right, I said we were going to go shorter this week. We're actually longer. So let's get to our predictions quickly. You go first. Yes. Give me a score of the game and give me a prop as well.
Yeah, I don't like where the Steelers are right now, either playing the game in New England or playing the way that they are. So I'm going to go Patriots 24-21. And I'm going to go with your earlier stat pack and say that I think that, and I hope that, but it's more think than it is hope, that Kenneth Gainwell goes under 23.5 rushing yards, not because he won't do well with the carries he gets, but hopefully and expectedly he will have fewer carries and therefore go under 23.5.
You know, I saw that go up to 24.5, so it's actually even going higher. I'm going to go with Travion Henderson over 25.5. I think even if Stevenson is the lead back, I think Henderson can get that. And I'm almost right on the same score. I said 24-22 Pats. I won't be surprised if the Steelers win this game. Maybe the Patriots just aren't ready. But the Steelers don't look ready to start the year in a lot of ways either. And if you think about it, everything that was bad in week one stayed bad in week two. And the one thing that was good in week one was the passing game, and it got worse. So, that's where the Steelers are after 2 weeks. Hey, before we go, Mike, I know you wanted to say something. I wanted to say something too. A lot of us who cover the Steelers, it's been a rough week because we lost Dale Lally this week. Dale and I did the pregame show for many years on the Steelers radio network, flagship station WDVE. We did the first 2 hours together. I liked one thing I liked about Dale was he and I could argue on the air for 2 straight hours and then enjoy our walk together to the facility, the back entrance to the stadium for the game. You know, we'd do the show at Stage AE, we'd brawl in the air for 2 hours, and then we'd pack our crap up and take the long walk in freezing cold temperatures or 100-degree heat and be happy talking to each other on the way to get to the back door, to get to the media gate, to get into Acrisure Stadium. And I thought about that about 1,000 times this week, knowing that Dale had gone to hospice and then eventually passed away 2 days ago. So I know he's having a service. The family's having a service for him tomorrow. If I can get this knee healthy enough, I'm going to be sure to get down there because I miss him already, and it's going to be lonely not seeing him at the facility or at the press box. I'm going to miss him tremendously.
You know, the Twitter has been problematic in a lot of ways, social media, but one of the beauties of that particular device is that it introduced me to Dale. I was gone from Pittsburgh from 1992, the end of 1992, until the beginning of 2024. So basically, Dale's entire career covering the Steelers, I wasn't here, so I never really got to know him as a colleague in that sense. And then Twitter comes along, and all of a sudden, these terrific articles about the Steelers start popping up on my, somebody that I follow that follows the Steelers starts retweeting a Dale Lally article. And Dale was just a wonderful journalist. All those years at the Washington Observer reporter covering the Steelers, not a huge newspaper from a circulation standpoint. And I started to read his stuff, and then eventually he went to work for DK, Pittsburgh Sports, and I got to see even more. And ultimately, I got to connect with him through Twitter and interviewed him for some articles and things like that, and then got to meet him a little bit once I returned. It's one of those weird things where you Twitter know somebody, and then once you meet, it's like you've known them for 10 years.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So that's how I met Dale last year at the training complex on the South Side, and it's devastating to lose him at age 56. that's just so hard for him and his family. And it's such a great loss for the Steelers community and the loss for sports journalism. And it really hurts to lose him. And I just wanted to make sure that before we closed out that I said some words to follow your great comments, because obviously you had the privilege of knowing him and getting close to him more than I did.
First song on the jukebox at Sharky's next year is off of Dale's playlist. I can guarantee you that. So we'll get one on for Dale and leave a bar stool open for him after our first show in Fox Sports Pittsburgh 970. I guarantee you that. So to his family, condolences. We're thinking of you. We're praying for you. And Mike, thanks for getting me through this and carrying a heavy load. Glad we made it through. And hopefully next week I'll be out of this kind of silly setup and back where we normally do it. But we will be on next week. We'll be posted on Friday. Thank God we're not doing it live. I think we'd have to be on at like 4:00 in the morning before the game in Ireland. And then we'll take a week off for the bye week like they will. And we'll be back the week after that. So check us out next week here and watch. If you missed part of it, if you tuned in late, you can get it. It's just up on the Facebook Live page and on YouTube. And I'll have the Mike's Beer Bar pregame show podcast in advance of the game against New England in Foxborough on Sunday. That'll go up on the Breakfast with Ben's podcast feed. And you can go to Mike's Beer Bar anytime this weekend. Check out the Pirates, check out the Steelers, check out all the college football. Meet me at Mike's.